My name is Emily, and I'm 29 years old. I never thought I'd be the one to dismantle my family's perfect façade, but sometimes life forces your hand. Last Christmas, my dad looked me in the eyes and said, "You're no longer welcome in this house," not realizing I was the financial foundation holding everything together. They thought I would come crawling back begging for forgiveness. Instead, I cut off every single bill I had been paying and watched as their picture-perfect life crumbled before my eyes. If you're watching this video, drop a comment, letting me know where you're from, hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up for someone who took you for granted. Now let me tell you how I learned that sometimes walking away is the only way to be valued. I grew up in what appeared to be a perfectly normal middle-class home in Portland, Oregon. Our two-story colonial, with its neatly trimmed hedges and white picket fence, was the envy of the neighborhood. But appearances can be deceiving. My father, Robert, was a controlling businessman who demanded perfection in everything. His company sold commercial real estate, and he brought that same hard-driving negotiation style home with him every night. Nothing I did was ever quite good enough. An A- was a disappointment. Second place in a competition was failure. He'd say things like, "Emily, mediocrity is for people who don't have potential. You have potential, so I expect more." My mother, Elizabeth, had been the buffer between my father's harsh standards and my childhood. She was gentle, artistic, and always knew how to soften his edges. I still remember how she would wink at me across the dinner table when my father started one of his lectures about excellence. That small gesture told me it was okay that I was enough even when I didn't meet his impossible standards. But then, when I was 8, my mum was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer. Within 6 months she was gone. Ciao. My world shattered. Not only had I lost the person who made me feel unconditionally loved, but my father seemed to retreat into himself, becoming even more demanding and distant. 2 years after my mother's death, my father announced he was remarrying. Diana was everything my mother wasn't. Loud, status-obsessed, and superficially charming. She worked in luxury real estate and dressed like she had just stepped out of a fashion magazine. At first, I thought maybe she would bring some warmth back into our home. I was wrong. Diana made it clear from the beginning that I was not her priority. She would fawn over my father in public, playing the role of devoted wife, but in private, she treated me like an inconvenience. "Your father and I are building a new life," she told me once when I asked if we could keep some of my mother's paintings up in the house. "It's time to move forward, not live in the past." Within a few years, my half-siblings arrived, Zach when I was 13 and Madison when I was 15. Suddenly, I wasn't just an inconvenience. I was old news. Diana lavished attention on her real children, as she once accidentally called them when she thought I wasn't listening. My father seemed to forget he had a daughter before them, focusing all his energy on his new family. Despite the emotional neglect, I thrived academically. Maybe it was my way of seeking my father's approval, or perhaps it was my ticket out. I maintained straight A's through high school, worked part-time jobs at the local bookstore, and then as a barista, and managed to secure a partial scholarship to the University of Oregon. College was both liberating and challenging. I was finally free from the daily emotional coldness of my home, but I was also struggling financially. My father had made it clear that he expected me to pay for most of my education. "It builds character," he said, even though I knew he and Diana had already started college funds for my half-siblings. I worked multiple jobs while carrying a full course load in accounting. I chose the major not because I loved it, but because I knew it would guarantee employment after graduation. While other students were enjoying the full college experience, I was balancing classes with shifts at the campus bookstore, weekend work at a local cafe, and summer internships that paid just enough to cover my textbooks for the next year. Despite these challenges, I graduated with honors and secured a position at a respected financial firm in Portland. It was a proud moment, though my father's only comment was, "Now the real work begins." Diana didn't even attend my graduation, claiming Zach had a soccer tournament that couldn't be missed. The irony of my situation became apparent about a year after I started my job. Despite his outward success, my father's business had been struggling for years. The 2008 recession had hit commercial real estate hard, and he had never fully recovered. One evening, he called me something he rarely did and asked if I could help out temporarily with a mortgage payment that was coming due. "Just until this deal closes next month," he assured me. "It's a sure thing, but the timing is off." That first payment was $2,800, a significant amount for a recent graduate, but I had been living frugally and had some savings. I transferred the money immediately, feeling a mix of concern and, if I'm honest, a small sense of satisfaction that my father needed my help. The next month, there was another request. The deal had complications. Could I cover the mortgage again? And maybe the utility bills too, just temporarily. What started as a one-time emergency gradually became a regular arrangement. Over the next few years, I took on more and more of my family's expenses. The mortgage, the utilities, the car payments for my father's Mercedes and Diana's Range Rover, the credit card bills filled with charges from high-end stores and expensive restaurants, even the tuition for the private school where Zach and Madison were enrolled. All the while, my father and Diana maintained the facade of success. They hosted lavish dinner parties, took luxury vacations, and posted perfectly filtered family photos on social media. Photos that rarely included me, despite the fact that I was funding their lifestyle. I told myself I was doing it out of love, out of family obligation. But looking back, I was desperately seeking their approval, their acknowledgement, their love. I thought if I proved my worth through financial support, they would finally see me as valuable. Instead, they took more and more while giving less and less. The emotional abuse escalated alongside their financial dependence. Diana would make cutting remarks about my appearance, my career, my lack of a serious relationship. At your age, I was already married with a child on the way, she would say, conveniently admitting that the man she married had wealth and status. My father became increasingly critical of my spending habits, ironically. Do you really need to eat out so often? He would ask during family dinners at expensive restaurants that I was ultimately paying for. You should be saving more for your future. The gaslighting was so subtle and so constant that I began to doubt my own perceptions. Maybe I wasn't contributing as much as I thought. Maybe I was being selfish by occasionally buying myself new clothes or going out with friends. Maybe I didn't deserve appreciation for helping my family. It took me years to recognize the toxic dynamic I was enabling. And it took one catastrophic Christmas dinner for everything to finally come crashing down. Last December marked a significant milestone in my personal life. After years of focusing on work and supporting my family, I had finally met someone special. Jason came into my life unexpectedly. A chance meeting at a coffee shop led to conversation, which led to dinner, which led to the most healthy, supportive relationship I'd ever experienced. After dating for 8 months, I decided it was time to introduce Jason to my family at our traditional Christmas dinner. I was nervous, but hopeful. Jason knew about my complicated family dynamics. I'd been open about the emotional distance and my financial support, but he hadn't experienced it firsthand. Part of me hoped that having an outsider present would moderate my family's behavior. I spent days preparing for the dinner. I bought thoughtful gifts for everyone: a leather portfolio for my father, an expensive scarf for Diana, the latest gaming console for Zach, and a charm bracelet for Madison. I even helped Diana with the dinner preparations, arriving early, to set the table with her best china and crystal glasses. The house was picture perfect as always. A 9-foot Christmas tree dominated the living room, decorated in Diana's carefully curated gold and burgundy theme. Garlands draped the staircase, and holiday music played softly in the background. To anyone walking in, it would look like the perfect family Christmas. Jason arrived at exactly 6, carrying a bottle of wine and a poinsettia plant. He looked handsome in his navy blazer, and the warmth in his eyes when he saw me made my heart flutter. "Everything looks amazing," he whispered, squeezing my hand reassuringly. The initial introductions went smoothly enough. My father shook Jason's hand firmly, assessing him with that calculating gaze I knew so well. Diana air-kissed his cheek and complimented his choice of wine, though I later overheard her telling my father it was clearly from the discount section. Zach barely looked up from his phone, while Madison at least offered a shy hello. As we sat down for dinner, the tension was already building beneath the surface pleasantries. Diana had seated Jason and me at the far end of the table, away from my father at the head. A small slight, but one that didn't go unnoticed by either of us. "So Jason," my father began as we started on the appetizers. "Emily tells me you work in software development. Is there much stability in that field these days?" Jason handled the thinly veiled criticism with grace. "Actually, the tech sector is experiencing tremendous growth. My company just secured another round of funding and we're expanding our team in the new year." "How interesting," Diana interjected with a tight smile, though I've always found tech people to be so transient. "Here today, startup bankrupt tomorrow." She laughed as if she'd made a charming joke. I felt Jason's hand find mine under the table, a silent gesture of support. He'd warned me earlier that he was seeing red flags, but I had assured him this was normal, that we just needed to get through dinner. The conversation continued in this vein through the main course. Subtle digs wrapped in polite inquiry, backhanded compliments, and the occasional outright dismissive remark. Jason remained poised throughout, redirecting conversations when they became too pointed and complimenting the meal generously. It was during dessert that everything unraveled. Diana was serving her traditional Christmas tiramisu when she casually mentioned shopping for the holidays. "I saw the most divine watch at Tiffany last week," she said, looking pointedly at the watch Jason was wearing, a Tag Heuer I had given him as an early Christmas present. Though I suppose some people prefer sportier styles. Jason thanked her for the dessert, seemingly oblivious to the implied criticism. But my father picked up the thread. "Speaking of expensive purchases," he said, his gaze shifting to me, "Emily, your sister mentioned seeing you at Nordstrom last weekend. Quite a shopping spree from what she described." I felt my cheeks flush. I had been buying Jason's gift, and a dress for tonight's dinner. "It was just a few things for Christmas," I said quietly. "A few things that probably cost a week's salary," my father continued. "You know, at your age I was already investing 20% of my income. That's how you build wealth, not by wasting money on overpriced watches." Something inside me snapped. After years of financing their lifestyle while being criticized for my own modest spending, the hypocrisy was too much. "That's ironic coming from you, Dad," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, "considering how much of my money goes toward your mortgage and car payments each month." A heavy silence fell over the table. Jason looked at me with a mixture of surprise and concern. I hadn't told him exactly how much I was contributing to my family's expenses. Diana recovered first. "Don't be ridiculous, Emily. Your father is just concerned about your spending habits. There's no need to exaggerate your contributions to this household." "Exaggerate," I repeated, a strange calm settling over me. "I've been paying the mortgage on this house for 3 years, $2,800 every month. I pay both your car leases, all the utilities, and half of Zach and Madison's tuition." My father's face darkened, his knuckles white against the tablecloth. "That's enough, Emily." "No, I don't think it is enough," I continued, unable to stop now that the dam had broken. "I've given you over $120,000 in the past 5 years. Money that could have gone toward my own home, my own future. And instead of gratitude, I get criticism about buying a watch for my boyfriend." My father stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. "You will not speak to me this way in my own home," he thundered. "Either you apologize right now or you can leave." I looked around the table. Zach was staring intently at his plate. Madison had tears in her eyes. Diana wore an expression of vindictive satisfaction, as if this confrontation was exactly what she'd been hoping for. And Jason looked at me with unwavering support, silently telling me he would back whatever decision I made. In that moment, I saw my family clearly for perhaps the first time. I saw the years of emotional manipulation, the taking, without giving the conditional love that wasn't really love at all. "I won't apologize for telling the truth," I said quietly, placing my napkin beside my half-eaten tiramisu. "I've been supporting this family for years while being made to feel like a burden. I'm done." "Then get out," my father said, his voice cold. "You're no longer welcome in this house." I stood up somehow, maintaining my composure. "Merry Christmas to you too, Dad." Jason followed me as I gathered my coat and purse. As we headed toward the door, my father called after me, "You'll be back. Where else do you have to go?" I turned one last time, meeting his gaze. "I have my own place, Dad, the one I pay for myself along with all of your bills. Remember." And with that, Jason and I walked out into the cold Christmas night, leaving behind the picture-perfect holiday and the broken family it concealed. The drive back to Jason's apartment passed in a blur. Snow had begun to fall, the white flakes illuminated by streetlights and Christmas displays. Any other time I might have found it beautiful. That night I barely noticed. The emotional armor that had protected me during the confrontation cracked as soon as we were in Jason's car. Tears came in waves, my body shaking with sobs that felt torn from somewhere deep inside me. Jason kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other firmly clasped in mine, occasionally murmuring reassurances that I couldn't quite process. "I'm so sorry," he said as we pulled into his apartment complex. "I had no idea it was that bad." "Neither did I whispered, the full reality of what had just happened beginning to sink in. "I mean, I knew, but I didn't want to know." That night was the longest of my life. I alternated between crying jags that left me gasping for breath and periods of numb silence staring at the ceiling of Jason's bedroom. He stayed with me through all of it, holding me when I needed to be held, giving me space when I needed that, instead making tea that went cold untouched on the nightstand. As dawn broke on December 26th, my phone began to light up with notifications. Texts, voicemails, social media messages, a barrage of communication from my family. My father's messages were a mixture of anger and condescension. Your behavior last night was completely unacceptable. When you're ready to apologize for lying about our financial situation and embarrassing this family in front of your boyfriend, we can discuss your return. Diana was more directly manipulative. How could you ruin Christmas like that? Zach and Madison are devastated. Is that what you wanted, to hurt your brother and sister? Even my half-siblings, who rarely contacted me directly, sent messages clearly orchestrated by my parents. Zach's text read like it had been dictated word for word. Dad says you made up stories about money. Why would you do that? Madison's was slightly more genuine, but still missed the point. Please come home and say sorry. Everyone's fighting and it's awful. The gaslighting was so blatant, it was almost laughable. They were trying to make me doubt my own reality, question the facts I knew to be true. For a brief, disorienting moment, it almost worked. Had I exaggerated? Was I being ungrateful? Should I just apologize to keep the peace? I showed the messages to Jason, who had made breakfast I couldn't eat. His expression hardened as he read them. This is textbook emotional manipulation, he said firmly. They're trying to make you the problem so they don't have to take responsibility for how they've treated you. Later that day, Jason suggested we visit his parents for lunch. I hesitated, not wanting to burden another family with my drama, but he insisted. They've been wanting to meet you anyway, he said, and I think seeing a functional family might help right now. Jason's parents lived in a modest bungalow in a working-class neighborhood. Martha and Bill welcomed me with genuine warmth, making no mention of my red-rimmed eyes or subdued demeanor. Martha hugged me like she'd known me for years, and Bill offered me a cup of coffee with such fatherly concern that I almost started crying again. Their home was nothing like the showpiece my father and Diana maintained. The furniture was well-worn family photos, covered every surface, and mismatched Christmas decorations had clearly been collected over decades rather than curated for a specific aesthetic. But there was love in every corner, evident in the easy laughter, the inside jokes, the comfortable silences. During lunch, I watched how Jason's parents treated him, with respect, interest, and obvious pride. They asked about his work, listened attentively to his answers, gently teased him about childhood quirks. There was no undercurrent of criticism, no subtle reminders of ways he didn't measure up. Emily's had a rough couple of days, Jason explained vaguely when his mother noticed my quietness. Family can be complicated, especially during the holidays, Martha said, patting my hand. Just remember, you're always welcome here. Any friend of Jason's is family to us. Family. The word hit me with unexpected force. This was what family was supposed to be. People who made you feel safe, valued, and accepted, not people who used you and discarded you when you stopped playing by their rules. That evening, I called my friend Sarah, a therapist who had been urging me for years to examine my family dynamic more critically. I poured out everything that had happened, and she listened without interruption. What you're describing is financial abuse layered on top of emotional abuse, she said when I finished. You've been functioning as their enabler, and now that you've disrupted that pattern, they're panicking. So what do? I asked, feeling lost. That depends, Wei, she replied carefully. What do you want the outcome to be? Do you want to try to repair these relationships, or do you need to create distance for your own well-being? The question gave me pause. What did I want? For so long, I'd been focused on earning my family's approval that I'd never considered whether their approval was worth having. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to just go back to the way things were because it's familiar. But another part of you is rightfully angry, Sarah finished for me, and maybe ready to stop enabling destructive patterns. That night, I sat down with my laptop and did something I should have done years ago. I pulled up all my financial records and documented exactly what I had been contributing to my family's lifestyle. Mortgage payments, utility bills, car payments, credit card payments, insurance premiums, tuition payments. The total was staggering, over $120,000 in the past 5 years alone. Looking at the numbers in black and white, the reality of my situation became impossible to ignore. I wasn't helping my family through a temporary rough patch. I was funding a lifestyle they couldn't afford while they criticized my much more modest spending habits. And in that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. The week after Christmas, I took a personal day off work and made 3 important appointments, one with my bank, one with a financial advisor, and one with a lawyer. At the bank, I went through every automatic payment and direct deposit I had set up for my family's bills. The customer service representative raised her eyebrows as I listed them off. "So you're paying the mortgage on a property you don't live in or have any ownership stake in?" she asked, clearly concerned. "Yes," I admitted. "It's my father's house. And these car payments are for my father's Mercedes and my stepmother's Range Rover." She looked at me over her glasses. "Honey, I shouldn't say this, but as someone old enough to be your mother, this isn't right. You're setting yourself on fire to keep them warm." The financial advisor was more pragmatic but equally alarmed by my situation. "Based on your income and these outgoing payments, you've been living on approximately 30% of your earnings," he noted, reviewing my statements. "The amount you've been giving your family would have been enough for a down payment on a very nice home or a significant investment portfolio." He helped me create a new budget that redirected all the money I had been spending on my family's bills into my own savings and investment accounts. "Financial freedom is about choice," he explained. "Right now, you're choosing to fund someone else's lifestyle at the expense of your own future." The lawyer was my final stop. I needed to understand my legal obligations and protect myself from a potential fallout. She confirmed what I suspected. I had no legal obligation to continue paying bills for my family, even if they had become dependent on my support. "However," she cautioned, "if you're named on any of these accounts, or if you've signed any agreements, you need to formally remove yourself to avoid liability." I hadn't signed any formal agreements, thankfully, but I had set up automatic payments from my accounts. The lawyer helped me draft a formal letter documenting my intention to cease financial support, and advised me on how to protect myself if my family attempted to take legal action. Armed with this information and support, I returned home and created a spreadsheet detailing exactly what would need to be done. The list was longer than I expected. House mortgage, $2,800 month. Father's car payment, $650 month. Diana's car payment, $950 month. Electricity bill, $250 month. Water bill, $120 month. Internet and cable, $230 month. Father's credit card, $1,800 month. Diana's credit card, $200 month. Health insurance premiums, $450 month. Zach's private school tuition was $100 month. Madison's private school tuition was $100 month. Miscellaneous household expenses, approximately $500 month. In total, I had been paying nearly $1,150 each month to support my family's lifestyle, more than 2/3 of my monthly income. No wonder I had been living in a small 1-bedroom apartment and rarely taking vacations, while they enjoyed their 4-bedroom house and regular trips to resorts. The process of disentangling myself financially was both liberating and terrifying. Each cancelled automatic payment felt like cutting a string that had bound me to a toxic relationship. But I also worried about the consequences, particularly for my half-siblings. Zach and Madison hadn't created this situation, and yet they would inevitably be affected by my decision. "You can't set yourself on fire to keep others warm," Jason reminded me, echoing the bank representative's words when I expressed these concerns. "Your siblings will adjust, and maybe this will ultimately be a valuable lesson for them about financial reality." I knew he was right, but the guilt was still there, ingrained by years of being told that family obligation trumped personal well-being. I compromised by setting aside a small emergency fund that could be used for my siblings if a genuine crisis arose, medical expenses for instance, but not for maintaining the lifestyle my father and Diana had become accustomed to. Before making any changes, I sent a detailed email to my father explaining exactly what I was doing and why. I listed every payment I had been making, the total amount contributed over the years, and my decision to redirect that money to my own financial future. I was clear that this wasn't a negotiation or a threat, but a statement of fact. I ended the email with an open door if he wanted to discuss a path forward. Based on mutual respect and acknowledgement of reality, I would be willing to have that conversation. My father's response came 3 hours later. "This is childish and unnecessary. If you need to feel appreciated, we can discuss that, but threatening to cut us off is manipulative and beneath you. I raised you better than this." The gaslighting was so blatant it was almost comical. My father was accusing me of manipulation while attempting to manipulate me. He was dismissing legitimate concerns as childish while behaving like a child himself. He was invoking his parenting as a reason I should continue to parent him financially. I didn't respond. Instead, I proceeded with my plan. I cancelled every automatic payment. I removed myself from every account I could. I redirected all that money into a high-yield savings account under my name only. And then I waited for the fallout. The first week after I cut off financial support, nothing much happened. I received a few text messages from my father asking when I was going to stop this nonsense, but no acknowledgement of the severity of the situation. In his mind, this was a tantrum that would blow over once I calmed down. Diana sent a few guilt-trippy messages about how hurt Madison and Zach were by my abandonment, conveniently ignoring the fact that it was my father who had kicked me out of the house on Christmas. I responded only to the messages about my siblings, assuring them directly that while I couldn't continue supporting the household financially, I was still their sister and would be there for them emotionally. Madison responded with a heart emoji. Zach didn't respond at all. By the second week, reality began to set in for my family. The mortgage payment due on the first of the month had been missed. My father called me at work, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "There seems to be a problem with the mortgage payment," he said without preamble. "The bank says it wasn't received." "That's correct," I replied, keeping my voice steady. As I explained in my email, I am no longer making payments on your behalf. "This isn't funny, Emily. Fix your mistake immediately." "It's not a mistake, Dad. It's a choice. Just like it was your choice to tell me I wasn't welcome in your home." There was a long pause before he responded, his voice dangerously quiet. "If this is about Christmas, I was upset. You know I didn't mean it literally." "I think you did mean it," I countered. "And that's okay. You have the right to decide who's welcome in your home, just as I have the right to decide where my money goes." "So that's it. You're going to let the bank foreclose on our family home out of spite." "No, Dad, I'm going to use my money to secure my own future. What happens to your home depends on what you and Diana decide to do. You could sell it and downsize. You could get second jobs. You could liquidate some assets. There are options, but none of them involve me paying your bills anymore." He hung up without another word. I sat at my desk for several minutes afterward, my heart racing but my resolve firm. For the first time in my adult life, I had set a clear boundary with my father and maintained it in the face of his anger. It was terrifying and empowering all at once. As the weeks passed, the consequences of my decision became increasingly apparent. 30 days after I stopped payments, the electricity was shut off at my father's house. Diana called me in a panic. "The power company says we owe 3 months of payments," she said, her voice shrill. "We had to check into a hotel." "Is this really what you want? To make your brother and sister homeless?" "They're not homeless, Diana," I replied. "They're in a hotel, and this isn't what I want. It's the natural consequence of spending beyond your means for years. I gave you both ample warning. We can't afford to keep staying at a hotel. What are we supposed to do? You could start by calling the power company and setting up a payment plan, or you could sell some of your designer clothes and handbags. I know for a fact that your closet contains at least $30,000 worth of luxury items." She gasped. "Those are investments." "Then it sounds like it's time to cash in some of those investments." The electricity was turned back on a few days later. I learnt from Madison that Diana had indeed sold several designer items to a consignment shop, though she had presented it to the family as a seasonal closet refresh, rather than a financial necessity. The car repossessions came next around day 60. Both the Mercedes and the Range Rover were towed from the driveway one morning. My father showed up at my workplace that afternoon, causing a scene in the reception area until security was called. "You've destroyed our credit," he shouted as the security guards approached. "Is that what you wanted? To ruin us?" My boss, alerted by the commotion, came out of her office. To my surprise, she placed a protective hand on my shoulder. "Sir, you need to leave immediately," she said firmly. "Emily is a valued employee here and we don't tolerate harassment." As the security guards escorted my father out, my boss guided me back to her office. "I'm so sorry about that," I said, mortified. "Family issues." She nodded sympathetically. "I gathered as much. Look, Emily, you don't have to share personal details, but if you're in some kind of trouble, the firm has resources that might help." Her kindness nearly broke me. I found myself explaining the situation, how I had been supporting my family for years, how it had come to an explosive head at Christmas, how I was now trying to establish boundaries. Instead of judgment, I received understanding. My ex-husband was financially abusive, she confided. It took me years to recognize the pattern and break free. What you're doing takes tremendous courage." That conversation was a turning point for me. If my accomplished, confident boss could understand my situation and validate my decisions, maybe I wasn't crazy for standing my ground. As the third month without my financial support began, the calls from various creditors increased. The private school called about missed tuition payments. The credit card companies began collection procedures. Neighbours reported seeing notices posted on the front door of the house. Extended family members started reaching out, some concerned, others accusatory. My father's sister called to berate me for abandoning the family, while my mother's brother offered quiet support. "Your mum would be proud of you for standing up for yourself," he told me. "She always worried that Robert would take advantage of your kind heart." Throughout it all, I maintained meticulous records. Every text, every email, every voicemail was saved and documented. I responded to direct questions factually, but without emotion, refusing to be drawn into arguments or guilt trips. When family members parroted my father's version of events, I simply provided them with the documented facts and let them draw their own conclusions. Some chose to believe my father's narrative that I was being spiteful and selfish. Others recognized the truth in my calm recitation of financial facts. Either way, I was no longer tying my self-worth to their approval. By the 90-day mark, the facade of my family's perfect life had completely crumbled. Foreclosure proceedings had begun on the house. Diana, unable to find work in luxury real estate due to the economic downturn, Irene had been forced to take a job at a department store makeup counter, something she considered deeply humiliating. My father's business contacts began to distance themselves as rumors of his financial troubles spread. Several clients pulled their listings, worsening his already precarious situation. His business partner called me, concerned about some irregularities he had discovered in the accounts. "I think Robert's been using company funds to cover personal expenses," he confided. "Nothing illegal yet, but definitely ethical grey areas. I wanted to know if you had any insight." I didn't, but the revelation wasn't entirely surprising. My father had always been willing to bend rules to maintain appearances. Zach and Madison were removed from their private school when the spring semester tuition went unpaid. They enrolled in the local public high school, which Diana described in one particularly nasty voicemail as exposing them to all sorts of undesirable elements. I couldn't help but note the irony. I had attended that same public school and turned out capable enough to support their lifestyle for years. In the midst of this upheaval, I received an unexpected text from Madison. "Can we meet somewhere, just us? Please don't tell Dad or Diana." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between her school and my office. When Madison arrived, I barely recognized her. Gone was the carefully styled hair and designer clothes. Instead, she wore jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "Everything's falling apart at home," she said, without preamble, sliding into the seat across from me. "Dad and Diana fight all the time. Zach's hanging out with these older guys who I don't think are a good influence. And no one will tell me the truth about what's going on with you." I took a deep breath, considering how much to share with my 15-year-old half-sister. "What do you want to know? Were you really paying all our bills, like the mortgage and everything?" I nodded. "For about 5 years." Her eyes widened. "Why?" It was such a simple question, but one I hadn't fully answered for myself until recently. At first, I thought it was temporary, just helping Dad through a rough patch. Then it became a habit. And I think I believed if I did enough, gave enough, they would finally see me as part of the family. Madison looked down at her hot chocolate. "That's messed up," she said quietly. "They shouldn't have taken advantage of you like that." Coming from a teenager who had benefited from my financial support, this acknowledgement was unexpectedly moving. "Thank you for saying that. Diana told us you cut us off because you were jealous of us," Madison continued. "That you resented us for having both parents while your mum died. The manipulation was so transparent it almost made me laugh. Madison, I was already supporting all of you before you were old enough to remember. This isn't about jealousy. It's about being treated with basic respect and gratitude for my contributions." We talked for nearly 2 hours. For the first time, I shared with Madison the full extent of the emotional and financial abuse I had endured. She, in turn, gave me glimpses into what life had been like from her perspective. The constant pressure to be perfect, the way Diana used affection as a reward for compliance, the undercurrent of anxiety about maintaining appearances. "Dad has a gambling problem," she confided near the end of our conversation. "I found receipts from casinos in his desk when I was looking for a stapler, And Diana shops when she's upset, like a lot. She has clothes in her closet that still have tags from years ago. The revelation about my father's gambling explained so much. The constant cash flow issues despite a seemingly successful business, the desperation, when I threatened to cut off support, the secretiveness about finances. It wasn't just the recession that had impacted his business. It was his own addiction. As Madison and I parted ways, she hugged me tightly. "I'm sorry they treated you like that," she whispered. "I never thought about where the money came from. I just assumed Dad was successful." "That's what they wanted you to think," I replied. "It's not your fault." Our conversation marked the beginning of a new, healthier relationship with at least one member of my family. Madison began texting me regularly, sharing updates about school and seeking advice about college options. She even started visiting me on weekends, a development that infuriated Diana, but that my father, increasingly preoccupied with salvaging his business, didn't have the energy to prevent. 4 months after Christmas, the final blow to my family's facade came in the form of an eviction notice. Unable to catch up on the mortgage payments, and with no bailout from me forthcoming, my father and Diana were forced to move out of the house that had been the centerpiece of their carefully constructed image. They found a small apartment in a less prestigious part of town, still perfectly safe and comfortable, but a far cry from the sprawling colonial with its manicured lawn and prestigious address. Diana was devastated by the downgrade, while my father seemed increasingly withdrawn, the combined weight of his gambling addiction, business troubles, and lost status finally breaking through his armor of denial. Watching from a distance, I experienced a complex mixture of emotions. There was a certain satisfaction in seeing the natural consequences of their actions finally catch up to them, but there was also sadness for the relationships that might have been, if not for the toxicity of money and status. And there was guilt, not for cutting off support, which I knew was the right decision, but for the years I spent enabling destructive patterns instead of setting healthy boundaries. Throughout this tumultuous period, Jason remained my rock. He celebrated my small victories in establishing independence, comforted me during moments of doubt, and never once suggested I should give in to the pressure to resume financial support. One evening, as we sat on the balcony of my apartment, watching the sunset, he took my hand. "I'm so proud of you," he said simply. "What you've done takes incredible courage." "Some days it doesn't feel like courage," I admitted. "Some days it feels like cruelty." "It's not cruel to stop someone from using you," he said firmly. "It's not cruel to expect adults to support themselves. It's not cruel to prioritize your own well-being." As if to punctuate his point, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a simple but elegant diamond ring. "I've been waiting for the right moment," he said, suddenly nervous. "I know things have been chaotic, but through all of it, one thing has become incredibly clear to me. I want to build a life with you, Emily. A real life, based on mutual respect and genuine love. Will you marry me?" In the midst of dismantling one family connection, I was being offered the chance to create another, one based on healthier foundations. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. "Yes," I said, tears spilling down my cheeks. "Yes, I will." 1 year has passed since that fateful Christmas dinner. In that time, my life has transformed in ways I never could have imagined. I received a significant promotion at work, my boss citing my exceptional financial acumen and personal integrity as key factors in the decision. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same skills I had used to support my family's unsustainable lifestyle were now being recognized and rewarded professionally. Jason and I purchased a modest but lovely 3-bedroom home with a backyard garden that reminds me of the one my mother tended when I was very young. We've made it our own, filling it with books, music, and furniture chosen for comfort rather than status. It's not a showpiece like my father's house was, but it's warm and welcoming, a true home. My relationship with my family remains complicated. My father and I speak occasionally, though our conversations are stilted and formal. The events of the past year forced him to finally acknowledge his gambling addiction, and he entered a recovery program 3 months ago. It's a positive step, but too much damage has been done for us to simply return to normal. Not that normal was ever healthy to begin with. Diana filed for divorce shortly after they moved to the apartment. Without the facade of wealth and status to bind them, their relationship quickly deteriorated. She's now dating a car dealership owner and seems to have landed on her feet, though I hear from Madison that she still speaks bitterly about me at every opportunity. Zach and I have minimal contact. At 17, he's deeply aligned with my father's worldview and blames me for their reduced circumstances. I've left the door open for when he's ready to have a more mature perspective, but I'm not holding my breath. Madison, however, has become a regular part of my life. At 16, she's showing remarkable resilience and insight. She stays with Jason and me most weekends, and we've had many deep conversations about family dynamics, financial literacy, and healthy relationships. I've secretly established a college fund for her, determined that she'll have the freedom to choose her path without the financial pressures I faced. The most profound changes have been internal. Through therapy and self-reflection, I've come to understand how my desire for parental approval led me to enable toxic behavior. I've learnt to set boundaries and to recognize when guilt is being used as a manipulation tactic. I've discovered that family isn't just about blood or obligation. It's about mutual respect, support, and love that doesn't come with conditions. Jason's family has become my family in many ways. His parents, Martha and Bill, treat me like the daughter they never had. They call regularly just to check in, invite us over for Sunday dinners that are noisy and imperfect and full of genuine affection, and have embraced their role as future grandparents with enthusiasm. My circle of chosen family extends beyond them to include friends who stood by me during the past year, colleagues who became mentors and supporters, and even a few extended family members who saw through my father's narrative and reached out with love. Our wedding is planned for next spring, a simple ceremony in a local garden followed by a reception that focuses on celebration rather than spectacle. My father isn't invited. It was a difficult decision, but one that Jason supported fully. Your wedding day should be filled with people who genuinely celebrate your happiness, he said, not people who resent it. Looking back on the past year, I can see that what seemed like the worst moment of my life, being kicked out on Christmas, was actually the beginning of my liberation. By cutting off the financial ties that bound me to toxic relationships, I created space for healthier connections to flourish. By watching my family's perfect facade crumble, I learned the value of authentic imperfection. The money that once went to supporting my family's lifestyle now funds my future, our future. Jason and I are planning to start a family of our own in the next few years, and I'm committed to breaking the cycle of conditional love and financial manipulation that defined my childhood. Our children will understand the value of money, but they'll value themselves more. They'll know that love doesn't come with an invoice attached. If you're watching this and recognizing similar patterns in your own life, know that you're not alone. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. Supporting family is beautiful, but not when it becomes one-sided exploitation. You deserve relationships built on mutual respect, not obligation or guilt. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with family? How did you handle it and what was the outcome? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Remember that sometimes walking away isn't giving up. It's giving yourself the chance to thrive. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to value yourself as much as you value others.